We are live-ish, live to my computer.
There you go.
Breaking
All right.
news.
That's right. We're back online here at Rubitracks After Dark. Once again, Nick Bailey got Scott Profit, as well as a new face. Some of you might be seeing now for the first time. Maybe it's been several times over on the High Ground by Nightfall channel. But Kyle, welcome. How are you, man?
I am doing good. Excited to hang out on Zoom with you guys. It's a little warmer when we do it this way.
That's right. Yeah, a little different weather than the last time the three of us were together. That's for sure. So we decided, Scott and I were talking after the last episode. We debuted the new mountain track product line for Rubitracks, and so now we figured we would go one on one with some of the existing customers and potential new mountain track customers, and just kind of share a little bit about the product. So yeah, thanks for taking the time, man.
Yeah, of course, of course. If anybody wants to buy this set right here, I'm trying to get this set over here. I'll cut you a good deal.
There you go. Yeah. So Kyle, I wanted to give us a brief little autobiography. Tell us where you are, what you do, and we'll get into how you became a Rubitracks customer.
Yeah, I currently live in Vancouver, British Columbia. Let's see, I started out in the Maritimes, not far from where Scott it lives. I grew up in Nova Scotia. I did a season or so in the Rocky Mountains, really into snowboarding in my early years. Got into
Nice.
like motorbikes, and that led to then 4x4, and did a lot of 4x4 and exploring, mountain biking here. British Columbia is pretty like wild for mountains and ocean and just outdoors culture. It's not so different than some of the other places that Colorado, Utah, even California is pretty like that. So the culture is pretty similar. And
Sure.
then yeah, I kind of started going really hard when I built this beast here. I'm currently on track to hit 52 weeks in a row, or at least one night was spent in my truck. Most was at least three. I've been to like Baja, I've been to Colorado, been down in Tahoe with you guys. Yeah, so I was going pretty hard on it last year, doing a lot of these adventures, and the idea of snow tracks came up. A friend of ours, Dwayne, brought it up, and we started researching. I came across Rubitracks, and as soon as I saw that it was based on the Maritimes, I was like, "This is the one." And then got to know Scott, bought the tracks. The rest is history. Still the only one who hasn't broken a bogey wheel, I think, which is surprising
Yeah, because
with this
you're
rig
one of the
here.
heaviest.
So. Yeah, yeah. Well, hey, you know what I mean? It's not all about speed. Sometimes it's just about technique.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't tell Dwayne. Yeah, so yeah, I mean that's me. In my other life, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been a computer nerd, a programmer, and an entrepreneur since an early age. So my two worlds are basically like programming and building companies on the internet, and then going in the outdoors in trucks or motorbikes and just, getting out there and exploring, the vast outdoors as much as I can.
Right on. Yeah. Well, it's you mentioned that Dwayne had brought up the track thing, and you guys had been doing some jeeping and some adventuring together.
Yeah.
Your situation is a little unique compared to mine because while I'm have been into the rock crawling and the four wheeling thing a lot, typically if we camp out, uh, it's like it's an add on to some rock crawling adventure or whatever. So it might be like
Yeah.
one night on the Rubicon, throw a bag, an overnight bag and a little tent in the back and go for it. But it's kind of neat how you guys got into it more from the overland side. It's about like just taking it all in outside, getting out to places where most people can't go and they can't stay. And it sure sounds like British Columbia has a lot of good terrain for that, huh?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I can't so much speak for Dwayne. I mean, I came into this world a little bit more through motorbikes and was really obsessed with, like, we've talked about this. Like, my dream has always been to go do Dakar on a motorbike. And when I was out here on the dual sport, we'd go out 5, 6, 7 days in a row, minimal camping gear. And then when I got into overlanding, it was kind of like the same vibe for me, but I was like, hey, I can actually like pack a whole habitat in the back of this truck and stay
Sure.
out for like weeks if I need to. So it's been cool to kind of like build a rig that needs to balance, yes, the ability to go and tackle some harder terrain. And I'll be honest, I'm not doing the most hardcore rock crawling like the Rubicon in this truck. I actually shy away from that a little bit. I mean, I've done plenty of technical climbs and technical obstacles and stuff, but it's not the same when you're running a truck this heavy, as, if you're running a lighter rig. So it's sort of like balancing like that capability of like tackling this complex terrain while also having the livability to go for long durations and, maybe 1,000 kilometers a day, stop camp somewhere 1,000 kilometers a day. And British Columbia is all logging roads, coastline, and mountains. So it's like there's, a route that I'm working on right now that would be 21 summits above 6,000 feet above sea level, which is pretty high when you're right on the coast, right? And you could do it in 21 days. And in my mind, that's like the ultimate, adventure, because every day you're going up to the top of a different mountain and camping at the top of a different mountain each and every single day, Northern Lights, all that good stuff. So it's a little bit of a balancing act. Like our wheeling here is not quite as technical for the most part as something like the Rubicon. But you cover so much more ground often in your trips, and trips end up being a lot longer because once you get out there, you're like, oh, there's a mountain right around the corner. Let's go to this mountain, this mountain, this mountain. And you can fit
Sure.
like 15 Californias in BC, right? So,
Yeah, very cool. So, and has it been one season now or longer than that in the snow for your rig?
yeah, it'd be one full season now on the tracks.
Okay.
I mean, plenty of snow wheeling before that, but yeah, full season with the tracks. And probably I'd say like 10 to 15 pretty decent adventures on it. What some of it was in the high alpine, getting stuck in, crevasses here on the coastal mountains. Other times it's more like rolling hills or like what we did in Tahoe, right? There's not really much of a culture for overland snow vehicles, or what do you call them? Over snow land vehicles.
Yeah.
Here,
Yeah.
here it's just snowmobile clubs, and they kind of blink their eyes when you come through. Like, well, what is this, right? You see a little bit of side by side action on the popular snowmobile areas, but most people when they see this, they're just like, what? In Vancouver, British Columbia area,
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So based on the experiences that you'd had before, just snow wheeling on tires, and then this last season that you've had on your tracks. So what are
yeah.
your what are your favorite aspects that are different, or what have you come used to, that you can do now that you're running the Ruby track setup?
I mean, there's no comparison with snow wheeling as far as like the places you can go on snow tracks. We have this pretty iconic trail up here called Whipsaw, or we call it the Whipsaw, some people call it. It's kind of like the Rubicon of BC, not quite as technical, but everybody runs it in the summer. It's the most popular route. And then once the snow comes around, people keep trying to go up there, but they can get less and less far into the trail as the snow comes. And we can go up in these tracks and get straight up into the Alpine with the snowmobiles, no problem. So it
Wow.
just unlocks like, real full-time access to stuff here in the winter. Whereas, when even if you're on, I run 38s, but you go people on 40s or 42s, it's like they just can't even get to some of these places. And look, there's still limitations on tracks, don't get me wrong. And
Sure.
we find them, but it's, you can go so much further in the snow. And the best part is like whether, the trail is groomed or not, doesn't matter. So we spend a lot of our
Sure.
time going into the ungroomed snow. And, we've been in, I mean, 6, 7, 8 feet of snow, no problem. And you're just crawling over top of it, right? It's kind of
Sure.
mind blowing, to be honest with you, where you can go with it. So combine that with the sort of overland aspect and drive up a mountain, build a big bonfire, have a good cookout, wake up the next morning and there's like a 7 foot hole in the ground. Fill it in with snow. It's a pretty cool adventure. You can basically take your, winter cabin with you wherever you want.
Mm.
Yeah, that sounds familiar, doesn't it, Scott?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
Not
is
quite
my
the Ruby
year.
Shack.
This is my
I'm Ruby
year.
Shack. I'm Ruby Shack Mini. You're Ruby Shack OG.
I'm so jealous of you
Yeah.
guys because there's no place for me to go here. Like I'm just so happy now they're finally digging the potatoes so I can drive across the fields.
Well,
There you
it
go. Yeah,
should be a good year for snow, I think. All things considered, it sounds like it's going to be a wonderful year for snow.
Yeah, I think we're gonna try and get that thing over to New Brunswick maybe this winter. There'd be lots of places to go over there with it.
It'd be a hell of a time. Well, right on. Yeah, and obviously, Kyle, you and I got to meet at the Rubitracks Invitational event that we had in
Yeah.
April at the beginning of the year. So you kind of plotted your own course and made the trip down. I know Dwayne from your neck of the woods, he was able to join us too. So since that was the first time we met, we kind of all got to run together. And then was that your first time running with other like track converted rigs like ours, other than just you and Dwayne?
Yeah, that was the first time running with anyone other than Dwayne. And it was cool to see the differences in our builds for sure. Like that's the first time I've ran with that many rigs. Usually up here it's just Dwayne and I. Dwayne and I have spent most of our time together coming down and seeing, everything from was it Ashley from the Burbs,
Yeah.
Brian's rig to obviously your rig, which was like purpose built for optimal snow access and weight and everything, to Dimitri's rig to Snailtail. I think he was using Tyler's truck. I mean, it was cool just to
Yeah,
see all the
Jimmy.
different trucks. Jimmy's truck, yeah. Or Jimmy was borrowing Tyler's truck, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was cool to see all the different trucks, and I think that's the other thing that really stands out to me about Rubitracks is like, and I'll be honest, I haven't had that much exposure to other brands, but again, from the moment I found out that Rubitracks was based out of the Maritimes and started talking to Scott, it was like, fast friends. And then the same thing when we went down and actually got everybody together. It's this tight-knit community of people, especially the people who are trying to get into it from a recreational standpoint. Like I think it's maybe a little different from the people who use it for other purposes, but from a recreational standpoint, right? So
Sure.
I not only learned a lot just by talking to you guys about your rigs, it was like cool to see the driving technique and just, you have so much experience yourself on tracks, Nick, that it was like, I don't know. I just don't feel like you would get that in any other track purchase, honestly.
That's always been the focus here was like to build a community, right? Like one of the
Yeah.
one of the biggest problems with tracks has been for the customer is not having anybody to go play with. So guys
Yeah.
that buy tracks, they'll go out and have a great time by themselves two or three times, and then they're on marketplace the next year because they haven't found a group to join, right? So it's nice to see that these groups are starting to build and
Not only that, I mean, I think any snow sport, right? Like snowmobiling is the same way, snow
yeah.
biking is definitely the same way, skiing, snowboarding. It's like these are all recreational activities that if you're trying to learn it on your own, it can feel or you can appear to be a pretty steep learning curve, right? Because it's just
Yeah.
like you're like, how do I even get started? It's imposter syndrome, right? You can see this in all kinds of sports. What I remember talking to you, Scott, in the very beginning and saying like, oh man, these are like the perfect recreational tool.
Mm.
And, they're just sort of being this like, how far can we push this? But also like, when we find our limits, how's that going to make new people feel, right? And I think there's this kind of perception that we all kind of held in the beginning where it was sort of like, well, we don't want to show too many of our failures getting stuck because then people will think that's what the experience is like. And the reality is like, yeah, you can get stuck. But when you go out and you learn from other people or you're part of a community like there is with Rubitracks, right? You learn through that J curve so much faster.
Mm.
And and like I think it was like the first day we went out as a group in Tahoe, we went up that hill, Nick, and I came down the hill and immediately got sunk. There's six other rigs to pull me out, so it's like no big deal, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's
Sure.
just like, Kyle's the first one to get stuck. Actually, Dwayne was the first one to get stuck. Let's be real. Yeah, okay. Front yard. The point
That's the
is
way I
like when you
remember it.
have that community, yeah, you don't have to worry so much about it because there's other people you can learn from, and getting stuck's half the fun, especially when you're out with a group of guys, right?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. There's got to be a little bit of challenge there, no doubt. But when you have, a market like this that's growing, right? Everything is relatively new. Um, Conversions like this have been around for a while, but at least, becoming mainstream. Just use the smaller, UTV and ATV stuff for an example. Like
Yeah,
they really started hitting the industry hard probably 10 to 15 years ago.
yeah.
Um, Smaller, cheaper product made for a smaller, cheaper vehicle. So it was a little more accessible. And you started seeing these things pop up. And with them as well. Lots of early failures, as like the technology is getting worked out and there's people
Yeah.
operating these machines that have never existed before.
Yeah. Look at the early
We're at
snow bikes. That's like a perfect comparison to like how people were like, hey, I wonder if we can adapt the snow bikes to snow. And they all
yeah,
sank right off the bat. But now people are flying on those things, right?
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. And it's one of the, all the snow sports that you mentioned, part of the reason why it is nice to have a community is the stakes are a bit higher, right? You go out in the summertime and you're on a Jeep trail and the truck breaks down and you may be uncomfortable, but you can probably get yourself a campfire. And if you have to walk out, not that big of a deal, you're just walking down a
No,
dirt
I
road.
just pop the value cab, turn on the heater,
Yeah.
send a message to Nick and Scott over Starlink. Hey, can you guys come get me? Right. So
Sure.
it's actually surprising to me it hasn't caught on sooner because, a lot of us put so much money into our rigs. And for those of us who are into wheeling first, right? And you kind of come across winter and it's like, all right, time to hang it up. And, I said earlier, like I'm on track for 52 weeks a year. And I don't want to stop adventuring in the winter. So it's like, do I go buy portals and just extra fun in the summer, or do I take a different path and buy something like tracks, which then gives me so much more ability to just keep on, getting outdoors. And
Keep on keeping
for
on.
me, I have to keep getting outdoors. So the tracks was the obvious purchase because now I've got the ability to go all year.
Yeah. And to get back to what you were saying about like getting stuck is no big deal with so many people around. Like I think one of the reasons it hasn't caught on before now is for that simple fact. Like people would go out, like it was kind of a very niche, it's still a niche product and it's a niche activity, right? But now like they go out and have a bad experience, post it on the internet, and then everybody believes that bad experience is all you can expect to have, right?
It's not an adventure until somebody gets stuck, is the way I think about it, right? And it's like, as
Yeah.
soon as I get the set of those mountain tracks, I'm never getting stuck. Those things are so big and so beefy that it's like, yeah, like, I don't see myself ever getting stuck, but I don't think getting stuck's that big of a deal, honestly. Just like if you think about it again in the summer, it's like, well, you go rock crawling, you go doing anything. It's like you get to break out the winch line. You're like, this is a good day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, some people don't have the mindset for these things. Some people don't like to kind of deal with kind of the little bit of adversity. How do I figure this out? And I've been in my share of sticky situations where I call up Scott at the top of a mountain when there's nothing but snowmobiles to winch off of, right? And I'm like, how am I going to get out of this one? He's like, take the spare tire off, or like dead man's winch, right? And it's like there's been a few of those situations where you got to stop and step back, and it could go either way. But you know that before you go put yourself in the situation, right? And it's the same thing whether you're on tracks or you're not. It's like you kind of prepare for all of the different circumstances, and then something comes up, and you're like, cool, opportunity to test my know-how, and then you pass that along to the next set of people. But anytime I've been out when there's more than one track vehicle, I've never been worried about being stuck.
Hmm.
If I go up by myself, I tread more carefully, but as long as there's trees, I'm not worried about it. I can winch off I can winch myself out of pretty much anything.
Yeah.
It's just that when you get past the trees into the very high alpine, you're by yourself with a bunch of snowmobile people. That's where the learning curve for me was like, maybe should have thought this one through a little bit more.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
you learn, right? You learn, and that's not where everybody's going to take their rig. It's in my opinion. Sometimes we even bring out wheeled vehicles with us. We'll bring them out behind us and see how far they can go. In the worst case, you just winch off of them. But realistically, you're winching them out of all the stuff anyway, right? So,
Sure.
yeah, I don't think it's a big deal to get stuck. I think it's part of the fun.
It is. I agree. The nice thing about
And
snow also too, like you get stuck on rocks and dirt, it's a lot of work sometimes, but if you get stuck on snow, it's a lot of shoveling, but you can always shovel your
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely been a few situations where there's been a lot of shoveling, but like I said, if you have any other rig, it's super easy, even if there isn't trees or anything, you just winch off to the other rig.
Yeah.
And the great thing is once you get the tracks, coming up through the snow, they'll climb right out. You don't necessarily have that situation when you're dealing with jagged rocks and different things that are getting hung up on steering dampers and whatever. With snow, it's like you'll slide right over it once you get going.
Yeah.
yeah, that was one of the key things that I was going to highlight is it's easy to, picture the mountains and the woods and the deep snow as you go back and all that being uncharted, unknown, and cold and frightening. But one of the biggest differences, we were talking about an oversnow vehicle. Effectively, you're building a road with you as you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As long as you're being cautious, like in untouched areas, if you get into a nasty spot, odds are good that the nasty spot is a very, it's one vehicle length. And so
Yeah.
whatever method you use, if it's get yourself back 5 or 6 feet, you're right back on the track and on your way out of there. And if it's a completely untouched area, then you've got your trail of breadcrumbs all the way home, right back in your tracks. So it is a pretty cool thing that most folks have not really been able to experience. Snow wheeling communities have been big; they've experienced that for a long time. Someone's got a brick trail, right?
Yeah.
You put your big rig out front, and you can, if you stagger everybody back, getting smaller, you can get some pretty amazing places even with a pretty small rig. And
Yeah.
Kyle, like you mentioned, in my immediate area for the first season, I was the only one with tracks, but we could
Yeah.
go to all new places. I could break a trail and bring the rig on 42s behind me, and
Yeah.
bring everybody to out deeper in the backcountry than they've ever been. So that's always been a really cool aspect.
Yeah, and I think the similarities with snow wheeling are underappreciated, right? Like I know some guys, maybe some of the guys that, have kind of made it appear that it's, sketchier than it is, and they hop on the tracks and they're like, horsepower, let's go fast, you know what I mean? And then they smash into the snow and then they're like, oh, how'd I get, like, I got stuck. Big surprise, right? Like, yes, momentum
Sure.
will, with these big triangular tracks, will cause you to, find yourself stuck in the snow. But if you approach it the same way that you will with snow wheeling, right, and focus on technique, you can go pretty much anywhere on them. Right. And anytime you start to feel something sinking in, or you find yourself in a little divot or a snow well or whatever, you have enough time to be able to go, oh, back it up, make sure that everything is great, move forward, carve a new track. And there'll be quite a few times where the snow even gets so deep that you're like, well, I can't stay on top of the snow. So you back it up, climb up on the snow on the other side. And like you said, pack a little, you pack the snow down as you go. You can go like indefinitely in super deep snow, for sure. I mean, especially if you got like gearing like you have, you're geared, way down. Jimmy and Tyler's are geared way down, right? We're
Sure.
488 gearing, and it's still, it's like a huge gear reduction as soon as you throw these things on.
Yeah.
Right.
And you say that most common question I get, and
Mm.
and you touched on it right there, is people ask me how much snow can they go through, and it's not about going through the snow. It's about
No.
going over the snow, and people
Yeah. I mean,
get that through their
100
head.
centimeters,
Yeah.
300 centimeters, right? There's a little bit of like snow condition, I think, that goes into it, right?
Mhm.
Like, if there's 5 feet of fresh, really dry snow, you know, probably going to be pretty easy to even go through that because you're just going to blast through it, can come over the hood.
Mhm.
If it's wet snow, you stay on top, it's going to pack down. So like there's still, snowpack and snow condition, but like it doesn't really matter if there's 3 feet of snow or 100 feet of snow,
Well, you
right?
look,
Because you're only going to sink through so much of it before you create a base for your vehicle.
that's it. And you look behind Nick there, like that's the railing of the bridge right behind his chin.
Yeah. Yep.
That's not even the road
Yeah,
deck,
the road deck is, yeah, right here.
right at your
Yeah.
finger there. So what do you think is there, Nick? You got over 10 feet of snow?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this is probably because it's crowned a little bit too, right? You got a bridge that goes through the air, and it's not going to hold all the snow with the wind and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah.
up at top where the vehicle's sitting, I think that's easily 13 or 14 feet.
Yeah.
Perfect example right there, right? You got 12 feet of packed down, snow as a base, and then maybe like a foot and a half of fresh that you're just, and that's like ideal conditions, in my opinion, for the tracks because you're staying right on top of a pretty decent snowpack, right? A lot of the stuff we get, you can almost see it in this snow. It doesn't get as deep here. And the snow that we get tends to come in larger sums and be really wet when it comes. So initially, it can be really kind of sludgy and concrete, and you want to stay on top. But once you pack that down, right, it's infinite traction over wheels because the wheels turn that layer into ice. And as soon as that layer turns into ice, because a couple wheels have gone over it, now you're getting zero traction on it. Whereas the tracks will still cling on top and climb right over that and rarely will, refine the snowpack down to the point of ice. So you can just keep climbing right over it. And that's just because we're on the coast. The snow tends to be really wet here, and so it ices up really quick.
Right on. Well, Kyle, as we look forward to our next season here, you have any good recommendations for a host area for the 2025 Rubitracks Invitational?
I mean, I don't think much beats what we did last year, to be honest with you. That is pretty much the perfect venue. But at some point, we're gonna have to throw British Columbia in the mix, get you guys to come up. There's a cat skiing operation up here on a road called the Hurley. I think it's called snowcats.ca. We met up with a guy last year. He was in his cat and he came out. We had just pulled out a guy who was stuck on this mountain road for like 3 or 4 days. And
Wow.
we got talking to him and he was pretty chill. He thought the tracks were cool. He's like, come up to the cabin sometime. So I think one of the things I might try to do this year is head up there a couple times. And he's got a little he's got something up there. I've never actually been there. But that could be cool. I'd throw that in the mix. I don't know that it compares to our setup from last year. But if we're looking for new destinations, British Columbia, we'll find something in British Columbia to make sense.
You never know where the snow's going to fall, right? So it's always good to
Yeah.
have options and think about it early.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a great year. I still think you guys have the best snowpack possible. And I think also the culture down there for over snow vehicles is just so much better developed. If there's one thing that I wish would accelerate here in British Columbia is a better understanding of this recreational segment. We're sort of like stuck in this weird place between the Four-Wheel Drive Association and the snowmobile clubs, and neither one really kind of understands what we're about. But I think there's a culture, at least from what, you taught me about, Nick, when I was down there, of like over snow vehicles being a little better understood and there actually
Sure.
being like some structures and rules. So I mean, I like Tahoe as the destination. That's my first pick.
Well, and as far as I understand it too, half of the mountain tracks that have been made to date are going to be on their way out here very soon. So
Yeah.
we may be able to add some new faces to the Invitational.
I'd say California is going to be the capital of mountain tracks this year.
Really? So is that half of the ones that were made this season or half the ones that are made ever?
Well, I mean,
Both.
yeah. So we only brought in enough parts to build 6 sets of mountain tracks, and
Okay.
3 of them were gone before we even
How
told
many
them.
have left? How
Got 3
many
left.
have left?
3
Okay.
left. And
And one of them you're gonna powder coat black for me, right?
well, quite
All
possible.
right. We're making it official right here on the show.
There we
I'm
go.
putting in my order, Scott,
For a
and
black set of mountain tracks.
black set of mountain tracks. Don't tell Dwayne.
We can hook you up. Yeah, do
There you go,
it.
Kyle.
Oh, I think
Nice.
it'd be killer. That'd be killer on mountain tracks for sure.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking we'll do that, and then I'll throw those on this, and then I'm gonna see about maybe keeping this set and
Mhm.
throwing them on maybe on a JL or something. And yeah, I mean, people come up to British Columbia. I go out all the time. I'm looking at doing some guiding in the summer and in the winter this year. Maybe start doing that and get people out here a little more interested in the try program, because I think the more people will try these and experience them, the more they realize just how awesome they are. It's one to me, it's one of those products that you can't fully appreciate until you get up close to it and even experience it in real snow. Like everything else, all the people who are commenting on whatever video they might be commenting on, like they just it's not you don't know until you've done it. And it's so much better than it looks online, even in some of these videos that we do where we're going to these cool places. It's just so much better in person.
Yeah.
So I believe in it, and I think if we get more people trying them out and build the community up, it'll be something that most people will look at, as the same way as like buying big tires for snow wheeling. I think this is even more practical. And I think the thing that other people should know about this, I don't know if you guys have covered this stuff, but our approach, the approach that Dwayne and I use, is a little different than the approach a lot of people do. Like Nick, I'm pretty sure you trailer your truck most of the snow season, right? So you have the
Correct.
tracks on there. So when I go to the trail, I bring the snow tracks in a trailer and then I install them at the trailhead. And some people kind of like their eyes roll back in the head like you're doing that every time. It only takes about 45 minutes, maybe an hour if you're having a couple of beers while you're going. They're incredibly easy to just do. And I just convert to and from Friday night, throw them on. Sunday afternoon, take them off, spend the weekend in the snow. So, you don't have to do it that way, but you don't have to necessarily have like a tow rig, a flat deck, and all these other, like a dedicated rig for this stuff.
Yeah, you and Dwayne both, like you guys rode all the way down there right to California pulling trailers with your tracks and all your
Well, Dwayne flat decked his,
Oh,
so
right. Sorry, that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. But Dwayne
Sell
does
out.
normally trailer. It's just that yeah,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
the only hardcore. I get
Yeah, I
it.
know. Dwayne, no, Dwayne does definitely usually install some. He's the one who actually gave me confidence that we could be doing it because, he and I went out together and then we just got really good at, jack up the truck, do the front, do them on the back, jack up the front, do it on the front, boom, 45 minutes later. So yeah, we'll head out Friday night, land at wherever our destination is, set up camp, install the tracks, head out for a little midnight run, come back Saturday morning, we're out, come back Sunday evening, take them off. It's pretty routine. All you need is
Sure.
an impact driver and 19 and 21. And yeah, and I think you could even change the nuts so that you could just stick to a single socket, right? So
Yeah,
you don't need a
absolutely.
lot. Torque wrench, basically you're done, right? A
Usually,
jack.
usually what I send out takes a 3/4 or a 19. When you have to change sizes, it's usually because of whatever the factory nuts are on the vehicle.
Yeah, I think I have a 21 because of my aftermarket wheels
Yeah.
or the locking nut or whatever it is. But yeah, 19 to 21 torque wrench and a, 2-ton jack,
Yeah.
basically jack it up from the axle.
Yeah.
Mountain track solid jack. Check.
Mountain mountain
Yeah,
tracks are another inch and a quarter taller than what you have. So
I
that's
like it.
yeah, that much more under axle.
They just look so much bigger in the sense of surface area for
Yeah.
and the cantilevered nose. I can't, Nick, you already know because you've been running this style for a while, but I feel like that would just give so much more advantages with some of the stuff we run in because if you look at the worst stuck I got last year, it was in the Alpine coming across a snow bridge over a river that was about 6 feet deep. And as I go across it, you can kind of see in the video that it breaks behind me. But as I come across back, what happens is I went too fast. And because the nose on the cross country one doesn't have the same level of, cantilever, I just poked right through the snow bridge and then boom, got stuck, right? So having that little cantilever, especially in deep snow, whether it's a situation like that or just staying on top of the snow, to me, it's just such an obvious design. I wish you made them last year.
Yeah, no, like Nick was the first on that. And I mean, it is an obvious design. The problem with it, and the reason I didn't offer it until now was it only fits on certain vehicles, very select vehicles. Like you can
Mhm.
get away with it because you got the stubby bumper. I can't even run them on that Jeep behind me without, taking the
Oh,
bumper.
because you have the
I've
wide
got the
bumper on it,
I've
hey?
got the full width bumper, but you look at all the vehicles on the market that are running these tracks. The Jeep is the only one that you can peel the bumper off of and have room up there. Everything else has got
Hmm.
the entire front end of the vehicle is there. Like even if Nick moves his head, Dimitri's Toyota, like the only reason he'd be able to get away with it is because he's up so high. So we had to make a decision, and that was to make something that worked for everybody versus making stuff that was specific. But now as the company's growing, um,
So it would come out to a little bit like here, I guess, right? That's kind of what, because they're a little wider.
no, they're the same width.
Are they the same width? Okay.
Yeah,
So no
still a
problem then.
15-inch wide track. It's
Okay.
just gonna come up higher in the front.
Oh, I get it. I see. I can see it on yours now. Yeah. Yeah, I
Yes,
mean
when
it's
that
crazy to me how much vertical space like I'm even more fender chopped now than this, so I can't wait to see the tracks on it this year. But the thing that was mind-boggling to me is how much space you actually get when you put the tracks on. Like I think my truck is about 6 inches taller, but the space between this, because you don't have that high wheel coming up, like right? Like it's
yeah,
the track runs right on the spindle. So you do have so much space up. Some vehicles don't have as much space behind, and you're right, other vehicles won't have as much space in the front with that track specifically because of the in-body bumpers, probably, right?
that's the beauty of the tracks, right? Like you don't really need that space. You've got all that space to run the big tires, but
Yeah.
Like that Jeep runs all day long on 33-inch tires, and we're able to bolt Rubitracks
Yeah.
mount, right? It should be lifted for wheeling. It should get probably, I would say, a 3-inch lift would be sweet on there.
It's not even lifted right now, right? That's
Oh, it
just stock
foams off.
height.
Like that thing,
Yeah.
it was just a lease return that I picked up in Dartmouth and hauled home, put tracks on. There's
Looks
absolutely
lifted.
nothing.
You throw
Yeah,
tracks on, it's like portals, right? It's like instant
it's
lift.
exactly like portals in
Yeah.
two ways, right? You get the reduction of the drive sprocket, and you get
Yeah.
the extra height, and like complete lift, not just body type lift, right? You pick the axles and everything up with the tracks.
Has anybody done portals on tracks though?
No, not yet. Not
Is
well,
that
not
not
on
yet
my
been done?
track. You'd be pretty slow at that point, I would think, right?
You think? I feel like you basically take over the universe. There'd be like a vortex that would come in and you'd just be like given King Tracks title for life if that happens. So nobody's done portals on tracks yet.
Not that I know of. I have to talk to Dimitri now. He put portals on the Tacoma just a couple
Does
weeks
he?
ago. Yeah.
Okay, so he'll definitely be the first then. I was gonna say don't tell Dwayne,
Well,
but
the tracks are going on
uh
something else. He's got a different plan this year.
oh yeah.
I think the tracks are going on that this year. He's got other plans for that, but it'd be interesting to see what he comes up with. But
So what would be the issue with portals on tracks? You're saying the gear reduction would be so intense or
I don't know of any issue. I've never really given it any thought. I don't know if there'd be any clearance issues like with the portal box, with how the sprocket needs to go in and over something. I don't know if that portal box would interfere or if the
Mhm.
track coming forward.
With the spindle maybe or the track? Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's something I'd have to explore. I never had a reason to even question it.
There's two aspects to it as far as the portals are concerned, but um, the cool thing about the mountain track is it's gone to a larger drive sprocket as well. So this is a
Okay.
20-inch diameter drive sprocket. So Scott, if you figure there's really not an off-road rig that's running any bigger than a 20-inch wheel. So that clearance for the portal would probably be fine because even the ring of your sprocket probably doesn't exceed the dimensions that a 20-inch wheel and its wheel edge would have. So that's
Mhm.
one thing. Second thing is if someone's running portals, they've already made the adjustment at the ring and pinion, to be able to run whatever tire size they've got. So like you've got 488s, Kyle. I'm running 529s. If we each had portals, um, some of them, it could be like a 50% reduction. So you could be running
Mhm.
like a 373 and then go up to a 40-inch tire and then still have effectively the same gear ratio on the ground.
Mhm.
So yeah, so those two aspects, looking at it, it could be done.
Mhm.
It's just all about money, right? I mean, you'll put more into portals than you will into a set of Rubitracks. So if
Well,
you've
that's
got
where I
just
think it's an interesting comparison, right? Because if I were to pick
right,
portals for tracks, I've made the right decision. It extends my
yeah,
wheeling through the winter. You're not going to get that. Portals are cool. Don't get me wrong. You're not going to
yeah.
get that through the winter season.
Well, there you go. Yeah, and I appreciate you, Kyle, bringing up the point about the trailer deal because there's quite a few people that we talk to that ask that question and like how hard does it really get to change them out? How much time does it take?
Dead
Like most
simple.
things, yeah, practice makes perfect. So in the
Yeah.
situation like you have, if you're doing it often, you know exactly what tools you need to have, and you get pretty dang good at it.
It's
Um,
actually the same
Now,
tools I bring in the summer. You know what I mean? Like it's the same tools that I would use to change a
change a
tire.
tire,
It's one extra socket. It's a 19 that's in the same kit, right? But there's like
there you go.
nothing at all different from it. I bring a bigger jack because I'm on flat ground and just easier to jack up from the diff opposed to the ball joint when you're just doing a tire, right? On the trail. But
Right.
there's nothing different about it. Adapters, that's it, right?
And then in my defense, for trailering around and leaving this thing on track. So my house is 6,500 feet above sea level, and I get 20 to 30 feet of snow at my house. So sometimes this is my grocery getter. So it makes
Fair
sense to
enough.
leave it on track.
Fair enough. We can't call you softcore when there's like 13 feet of snow burying your vehicle in.
Right on. Well, it's been awesome. Once again, I know Scott and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah.
Kyle, you've got any last words, Scott? Anything you think we missed?
No, I think we covered just about everything.
How about you, Kyle?
No, I mean it's good to see you guys. Great to hang out. I can't wait to hop on the plans for the invitational and see some new faces this year. Yeah, definitely if you're thinking about getting on tracks, just get them. Like it's like I said, if you're down for the purchase, if you like snowmobiling, the rest is pretty easy. And anybody who's on the fence, I mean, there's a bunch of people, whether it's, these guys here, myself, other people who are going to be on After Dark, just send us a message. Like, I think what we're all trying to do with this is get more people to use tracks because selfishly, when there's more people using tracks, there's more people for us to go out with on tracks. It's not something you're gonna do alone. And that's, part of the community building process is it's not just it's in our interest as well to see more people on tracks, I think, because, I want to spend as much time snow wheeling as possible. And I'm not really in a rush to go out by myself. So the more people who are
Sure.
doing this, the better.
It's like basketball, right? You can play alone, but it's more fun with friends.
It's totally more fun when there's other people. And you don't need a whole group of 6, 7, 8 rigs like we get sometimes, right? Sometimes just having one or two other people in your area,
Exactly. Yeah.
it's all it takes. Yeah. And you'll learn so quick that way too. So yeah, send a message, I guess, to any of us. And, I'm happy to chat with people who are on the fence about it.
Yeah. So if people are watching, are trying to get a hold of you, Kyle, how do they do that?
Oh, Instagram, High Ground by Nightfall. It's this truck here. If you are interested in look at any of the adventures that I've been on, I posted a bunch of videos from last year, here, including a video for the Rubitracks Invitational. So you can kind of see some of the stuff we actually did, like at the Rubitracks Invitational, we're like climbing, almost rock crawling through all of these trees and articulating, and it's pretty cool stuff. It'll really help you see kind of what some of these trucks can do, and then obviously, Nick's got some of the best videos on the planet for snow tracks going through all those little rivers and stuff when it comes to articulation. So I think can't even just plug myself. You got to check some of that out because anybody who's on the fence, once you start to see what these things are capable of, you're gonna start,
Yeah.
getting more. It's just you're not going to be able to stop thinking about it until you just buy them. So just buy them and get it over with.
If anybody wants to see that stuff, I'll put a card in this video at the end, but also on the Rubitracks website, we've got a YouTube tab on there where I've been compiling, not just our
Cool.
videos, but everybody's videos, anybody that's taken the time to make one. And we've got a page dedicated to all your guys' channels, so they can go on there and
Sweet.
check it all out.
Yeah. Yeah, for
Right
sure.
on. Well, sounds good, boys. These are my last words.
Mountain tracks, taller Jack.
Sorry, Jack.
That's it. And on that, I think we're out, boys.
Good
All
stuff.
right.
Have a good night.
Talk to you
Good
next.
night.